Buy or rent, the expert method to make the right decision. Buying or renting a home, this is one of the most important financial decisions you will make as an adult. And yet, many people make this decision without a clear method. They follow what others say, they follow habits, or they decide based on emotions. But this decision can impact your finances, your flexibility, and your lifestyle for years. In this video, you'll discover how different experts approach this question using simple examples and real numbers. And by the end, you'll know exactly when buying makes sense and when renting is the smarter choice based on your situation. If you feel unsure about this decision, that's completely normal. Some people say renting is a waste of money. Others say buying is overrated or even risky. The truth is, these opinions come from different ways of thinking. So instead of asking who is right, we're going to understand how each approach works and how to use them in real life. We'll start with the most analytical approaches and then move toward the most well-known perspectives. First, the market-based approach. Glyn Davis focuses on one key idea: the relationship between property prices and rent. Instead of asking, should I buy or rent, he asks, does buying make sense in this specific market? Let's take a simple example. In City A, a home costs $120,000 and the annual rent is $10,000. That gives a price-to-rent ratio of 12. In City B, the same home costs $120,000, but the annual rent is only $4,800. That gives a ratio of 25. Even though the price is the same, the decision is very different. In City A, buying can make sense because rent is relatively high compared to the price. In City B, renting may be the better option because property is expensive compared to rent. In general, when the ratio is below 15, buying starts to look reasonable. Between 15 and 20, the situation depends on other factors. Above 20, renting is often the safer and more flexible option. This shows something important. The market itself can change the decision completely. Now let's move to a more analytical approach. Felix explains that buying versus renting is not an emotional decision. It's a financial decision based on multiple variables. The first variable is time. Let's imagine two situations. In the first, you buy a home and stay for only 2 years. In the second, you buy and stay for 10 years. When you buy a property, you pay transaction costs, closing fees, maintenance, and eventually resale costs. Let's put numbers on this. Imagine you buy a property and spend $5,000 in initial costs and $2,000 in maintenance over time. If you leave after 2 years, those $7,000 are spread over just 24 months. That's almost $300 per month in hidden costs. If you stay 10 years, those same $7,000 are spread over 120 months. That's less than $60 per month. So in the short term, buying becomes expensive. In the long term, it becomes more efficient. Now let's look at another important variable: opportunity cost. Let's say you use $25,000 as a down payment. That money is now locked into the property. You can't easily access it or use it for other opportunities. For example, that $25,000 could have been kept as an emergency fund or used for other projects. This doesn't mean buying is wrong, but it means it comes with a trade-off. You gain stability, but you lose flexibility. So from this perspective, the decision depends on how long you stay and how much flexibility you need. Now let's move to a different way of thinking. Dave Ramsey focuses less on optimization and more on stability. His idea is simple. The goal is to reduce financial stress and build a predictable life. Let's take a practical example. Person A earns $3,000 per month and is considering buying a home. Their mortgage payment would be $800 per month. That represents about 27% of their income. In this situation, the person still has room for food, transportation, savings, and unexpected expenses. Now let's change the numbers. Same person, same income of $3,000, but now the mortgage is $1,400. That represents about 47% of their income. Now the situation becomes much more fragile. There is less room for error, and any unexpected expense could create financial stress. From Ramsey's perspective, this is too risky. He generally recommends keeping housing costs below 25 to 30% of your income. The idea is not to push your limits, but to stay in control. A home should increase your stability, not create pressure. Now let's look at a very different perspective. Robert Kiyosaki focuses on cash flow. His idea is that what matters is not what you own, but how money moves. Let's take an example. Person B earns $3,000 per month and decides to buy a home. Their monthly costs include $1,000 for the mortgage, $200 for maintenance, and $100 for taxes and other expenses. That's a total of $1,300 leaving their pocket every month. From a cash flow perspective, this is money going out. Now let's imagine an alternative. The same person decides to rent for $800 per month. This leaves a difference of $500 every month. Over 1 year, that's $6,000. Over 5 years, that's $30,000. This money can be saved, invested, or used as a safety buffer. For Kiyosaki, this flexibility has real value. So in his view, buying is not always the best move, especially if it reduces your ability to manage your money. At this point, you can see that these experts don't agree. Ramsey focuses on stability and encourages buying when it is financially safe. Kiyosaki focuses on cash flow and questions whether buying is always useful. Felix focuses on time and financial efficiency. Glyn Davis focuses on the market itself. These approaches may seem contradictory, but they are not wrong. They simply focus on different aspects of the same decision. So instead of choosing one expert, you can combine their ideas into a practical framework. Buying tends to make sense when several conditions are met. First, your housing costs should stay below 25 to 30% of your income. Second, you should plan to stay in the property for at least 5 to 7 years. Third, the market should be reasonable, with a price-to-rent ratio below about 15 to 20. And fourth, your personal situation should be stable and predictable. Let's take a combined example. You earn $3,000 per month. You find a home with a monthly cost of $850. That's about 28% of your income. You plan to stay for at least 8 years. And in your city, the price-to-rent ratio is around 14. In this situation, most conditions point toward buying. Now let's look at another example. You earn $3,000 per month. The housing cost would be $1,200 per month, which is 40% of your income. You're not sure how long you'll stay, maybe 2 or 3 years, and the market ratio is around 22. In this case, most signals point toward renting. On the other hand, renting is often more logical when your housing cost is too high, when you expect to move in the short term, when the market is expensive, or when your situation is uncertain or evolving. The key idea is that no single rule works for everyone. Buying is not always better. Renting is not always a loss. The right decision depends on alignment. Alignment between your income, your time horizon, your environment, and your priorities. If you want to simplify this even more, ask yourself 4 simple questions. Is my housing cost comfortable? How long will I realistically stay? Is the market reasonable where I live? And is my situation stable enough to commit? If most of your answers point in one direction, the decision becomes much clearer. This is exactly how experts think, not in absolute answers, but in conditions. Buying or renting is not about being right or wrong. It's about making a decision that fits your situation. If you want to better understand important life decisions like this, you can subscribe. And tell me in the comments, in your current situation, would you buy or rent?